What's going on, everybody? I'm Primal Liquid, and we have another tier list video here. Now, you guys might remember the last one we did just last week, this one right here, which you should totally go and check out if you haven't. But this time, you guys love that so much, we're going to do a different game series. Now, just as a friendly reminder, since some people in the comments on the last one decided to ignore this warning, this list is my opinion only. It is my opinion on where I would rank the games and also why I am ranking them there. That doesn't make me wrong, it doesn't make you wrong. I can like something that you do not like, and likewise, you can like something that I don't like, okay? This list is just 100% opinion. We can all enjoy different things, so please keep that in mind. Of course, more than welcome to discuss down below in the comments if you would change the list. And of course, that is also going to be the fun part, like it was in the last one. But for now, let's jump over and let's actually rank all of the Disgaea titles, shall we? Now, one of the things I am going to say straight off the bat is we are only doing the main titles, okay? Main titles only. This means no, like spin-offs like the Primal spin-offs. There's also going to be no Disgaea RPG, which, if you don't know, was the mobile version, simply due to the fact, quite a lot of people did not really enjoy that because of the microtransaction issue. But for now, let's take a look at what we actually have, shall we? Now, I have put these in order. It is Disgaea 1, 2, 3, 4, D2, 5 and 6, okay? These are essentially the main launches for Disgaea, and of course Disgaea 7 is not announced just yet either. We're going to be ranking them from S to D. Now, S is the tier that, if you've not played, you absolutely 100% should, and D is the pure trash tier, which nobody ever wants to play again or at all. So, let's take a look first at where the series started, shall we? Disgaea 1. Now, Disgaea 1 unfortunately suffers from a little bit of a problem. It has been re-released basically everywhere. Okay, not only has it been re-released basically everywhere, each different version has a bunch of different stuff added or taken away from it, okay? So because of this, we're going to try and do Disgaea 1 as a whole. So this is taking, all different ports into account. But even with that, okay, we are doing this list in 2022. And unfortunately, Disgaea 1 does suffer from a big problem. It doesn't hold up very well, okay? It is aged rather poorly. Even though the fundamentals of Disgaea 1 are the same as all other Disgaea games, unfortunately, it is slow, it's clunky, it's missing loads of quality of life features, it's buggy as all hell, and unfortunately the port and remaster they did for Disgaea 1 doesn't really fix any of these issues. Now, it is where the series first started. Lahal is an awesome main character. The story is very jokesy, as you would imagine from Disgaea. The gameplay is pretty much, what you would expect from Disgaea. The only problem is it suffers from a very big lack of endgame. Doing the endgame in Disgaea 1 is actually very simple and straightforward. Very easy, very quick to do. In fact, if you were to do the Disgaea 1, remaster that they released on PS4, you would probably be able to get the Platinum Trophy on this in about 40 hours. It's really not that difficult. However, because of all the bugs, including in the HD remaster, for example, the completely unfinishable item worlds. If you don't know, the item world in Disgaea 1, excuse me, the item world in Disgaea 1 does have a problem where the item world itself is procedurally generated, okay? This means the layout is always going to be different and things like that. However, there was a problem when they were making this, okay? Some of the item world stages are completely completely impossible to do. So what I mean by that is you can have like a small section somewhere on the field that is impossible to get to, and it's also impossible to attack monsters on there. So unfortunately, I'm going to put this in the B tier. Now, the reason it's in the B tier is there's too many bugs. It's slow and clunky as hell. It is a funny story. I will give it credit where credit is due. Lahal, Etna, and Flon are amazing characters. I do adore the hell out of them. But unfortunately, that doesn't save it from all its problems. What I would probably say is, if you have not played Disgaea 1, maybe try the Disgaea 1 HD Remaster, Disgaea 1 Complete. Give that a try. Or, if you want a cheaper alternative, get Disgaea PC. And if you don't know, the HD Remaster pretty much just cloned Disgaea PC. In fact, even the credits in Disgaea 1 Complete for the PlayStation actually say Disgaea PC credits. So that's how lazy of a port NIS actually did for this. Now, under normal circumstances, okay, I would actually put this in the C tier, but Disgaea 1 Complete does bring a few quality of life improvements to the game, and because of that, it's going in the B tier. Right, on to Disgaea 2, shall we? Oh, excuse me. Sorry guys, I'm not completely over my my chesty cough from the cold I had last week on holiday. Now, Disgaea 2 is an interesting one, okay? It essentially takes like everything about Disgaea 1 and then it improves it. Now, the characters, in my opinion, are not as fun. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Adele or Rosalind, unfortunately. But the story is a little bit better. The gameplay is definitely more refined, for sure. It still suffers today with that slow, sluggish feeling, but the endgame is slightly more developed. There is slightly more to do. It does take a little bit longer. There is more enjoyment from going through the item world, and there's just more systems in general for you to really start enjoying and wrapping your head around. Unfortunately, though, as I said, it still suffers the same problem as Disgaea 1. It is slow and clunky these days. Now, even though I rate it better than Disgaea 1, okay, Disgaea 1 does have the HD Complete version, which does knock that up a tier. Unfortunately, Disgaea 2 does not have that luxury, and so because of that, I'm going to also be placing that in the B tier. Now, I know, I've put Disgaea 1 and Disgaea 2 in the B tier. You guys are going to crucify me in the comments. I'm fully accepting of that. Just remember, this is my opinion. You guys can disagree. That's fine. It doesn't make either of us wrong, okay? Now, Disgaea 3. Now, Disgaea 3 is actually where I started the series. This is where I first played a Disgaea game. I'd never owned Disgaea 1 or Disgaea 2 until I'd played Disgaea 3. And this is where, you know, I fell in love with the franchise, and I went back and I played 1 and 2. But, nostalgia is not clouding my eyes, okay? While I do think Disgaea 3 is better than Disgaea 1 and 2 because it does have more quality of life, it is smoother to play, it has less bugs. Not only that, the endgame is astronomically superior, okay? It is astronomically superior, the endgame is. It is unfortunately also where NIS got greedy, because it is overloaded with microtransactions, DLC for characters. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. The main problem is the endgame fight, the fight against Ball, was DLC. Which means for you to properly have the ultimate experience, you did have to buy DLC for Disgaea 3. However, I'm actually going to rate this an A rank, even with that problem, Okay, even with that problem, I'm going to give this an A rank. Mainly because, right, you had the Chara world with the item duping on the Shadow Heart. You had a fully fledged, like, item world system. You had magic change. You had the ability to dupe ball weapons. If you don't know, the ball fight in Disgaea 3, ball would essentially magic change onto a bunch of margins, and then you could use the puppy paw stick to steal those weapons, and you could essentially then get axe-type weapons with like 70 million in stats. And on Disgaea 3, the stat cap was 99 million. So you would effectively be able to easily stat cap once you were able to actually get those weapons. Now, it is a shame there's no, like, re-release for Disgaea 3. There was a PS Vita version. Unfortunately, there's been nothing for PS4, PS5, PC, or anything like that, which I think is very unfair for the series, and I think it's very unfair for the game itself. If that had a re-release, I do think they could fix a lot of the issues. It does still suffer with some pacing issues. For example, there's no cheat shop or anything like that, so it does still suffer there, but it is still a good game nonetheless. It is definitely a little slower than something like Disgaea 5, but if you've not played Disgaea 3 and you are a fan of the franchise, I would still say give it a try. You might actually enjoy it, providing you can actually play it. Because as I said, there's no re-releases anywhere, so being able to play this in 2022 might be a bit more difficult than you imagine. Right, let's move on, shall we, to Disgaea 4. Now, Disgaea 4 is an interesting one in that it does have a few different versions, okay? It has the normal Disgaea 4 version, it did get a PS Vita release as well, and then it also got Disgaea 4 Complete, a re-release on the PlayStation 4. Now, originally, Disgaea 4 would have been an A rank. Okay, for the PS3 and the PS Vita version, they would definitely be a solid A rank. The main character is awesome as hell. The supporting character, Fenric, is truly a badass. The story is incredibly good. Gameplay is a major step up across the first 3 titles. This is basically an improvement in every single way compared to the previous 3 games, okay? If you are going to, like, start a Disgaea game, well, if you were going to start a Disgaea game, I should say, this would have been the best one to start on. It had the most quality of life improvements, and it was definitely the easiest for a new player to get into. However, when Disgaea 4 actually came out, when Disgaea 4 HD Remaster came out, the Disgaea 4 Complete version, that brought even more quality of life features to the game. It brought things like the cheat shop, there were improved item worlds to make the pirate hunting easier. There were a few more quality of life changes as well, such as speed and things like that. And because of that, I'm going to put this in an S tier. Now, I don't necessarily think it is deserving of an S tier, but I also don't think it's deserving of an A tier, okay? I think Disgaea 4, including the complete version, would actually be somewhere between A and S. It's not a must-play game of the century, okay? But it is a game you should play if you can. It is definitely a very fun and also enjoyable game to play. That's why I think it's fair to rank this between S and A. So for now, I'm going to be nice and I'm going to put it in the S rank, okay? So, let's move on to the next one, shall we? And this one is... it's a weird one, okay? Disgaea D2. Now, this is essentially a sequel to Disgaea 1. However, it's also set in an alternate universe. So it's a sequel in an alternate universe. However, even though the story is lacking, the characters are fun. I do enjoy the characters. The story is a little lacking, unfortunately. But, there were... oh, excuse me. There were a lot of new things introduced in D2, which make it a very interesting outlier for the Disgaea series. So Disgaea D2 was the first Disgaea game which introduced the cheat shop, which meant no more passing enemy strength bills. It was literally just a toggle. You could change your modifiers, so you could get less money, more EXP, you could get less EXP, more money, and so on and so forth. That in and of itself was a huge quality of life improvement, which I absolutely adore. Not only that, it also featured a new mode, which I can't quite remember the name of. I don't think it was Rixosha like it is in Disgaea 6. I think it was something else. But it was something essentially that is like a higher difficulty, and when playing on that, your characters would absorb stats from enemies that they killed. Okay, so not only could you get all of your actual stats from gear and things like that, you could also absorb stats from enemies, and that basically introduced a new whole kind of power creep. Not only that, Ball, the ultimate fight in D2, is actually quite difficult. He is actually quite strong. You do have to do a lot of preparation in order to beat him, and it is a fun fight. You know, there's not really, well, there was, but there isn't anymore because it was fixed in updates. There's not really a lot of cheese that you can actually do in D2, but, and I know it's going to be weird for me to say this, the endgame grind was a little too much. I do think the endgame grind was a bit too much for Disgaea D2, and that's kind of what cements it in the A place. Now, I think if you haven't played this game, give it a playthrough, but maybe don't try and max everything out, okay? It would take a very long time to perfectly max something. You can easily soft cap. You can very easily soft cap and do the end game, you know, like within the usual 1 to 200 hours for Disgaea. If you wanted to perfectly max out a character, that's gonna add hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours on. So maybe try and avoid that. Now, let's move on to Disgaea 5. Now, I think any fan of Disgaea will easily agree with me here. Like, that is definitely S tier, okay? This takes everything from Disgaea. This takes literally everything from all the previous Disgaeas, the HD remakes, all the different ports, and it improves it astronomically, okay? We add just astronomical amounts of quality of life improvements. The story is phenomenal. The main characters are awesome as fuck. It is an extraordinarily well-defined endgame system. So many maps, so much customization. The item world is amazing. The Chara world could be improved, but that's not bad though, to only have one negative out of all of that. The Chara world, while a fun gimmicky change, I think is not a very enjoyable experience. Personally, it's something you could do for a little bit, but then eventually it does start to get tedious in Disgaea 5. But it also introduced online player maps, or should I say the PS4 version introduced online player maps. The Nintendo Switch version did also have them, only to a worse degree. And then the PC version completely removed them, which is the worst decision ever. Hands down, that is the worst decision ever. Once you complete Disgaea 5, you've done all the post-game and things like that, the online user-created maps brought a whole new experience to the endgame. There were some user-created maps on this that were, oh my god, they were hard. They were like insanely hard. You had to have basically perfect characters, okay? You had to have perfect characters, perfect gear to even remotely stand a chance. And even then, you had to have the correct abilities. You had to have the correct abilities on characters. You had to follow, correct routes and kill the correct enemies in order to even stand a chance on some of these maps. It was next level hard, but that also made it a next level experience. It was so fun. Not only that, it basically gave you a way to break the game whenever you wanted in a whole different, environment. Like you could do basically whatever you wanted in Disgaea 5, and you never felt like you were going backwards. You were always moving forward. This is definitely the game that if you've never played a Disgaea at all, play this. Okay? Play this for sure. This is definitely the one that I would always recommend a newcomer to Disgaea to play. Okay? It has the most quality of life. It is the easiest for a new player to understand, and the end game is also nicely balanced to get to. Okay? If you've not played Disgaea at all, play Disgaea 5. Give it a shot. Now, all of these, whatever. If you've never played a Disgaea game, you don't really have to care about these 5. But Disgaea 5 itself, give it a try. If anything is going to get you into the franchise, it will be this game. Okay? Right. With that said, let's move on to the most polarizing title in the series. The last release, Disgaea 6. Now, I said on release for Disgaea 6 that this is not a full-fledged game. This is something that NIS has rushed out as a test to get feedback and experience in doing something with a new system. And then, everybody laughed at me. Everybody thought I was full of shit. But then, less than a year later, they announced Disgaea 7, with basically everything on Disgaea 6, but improved. More characters, more refined systems. They really have fixed all of 6's issues in 7 that we can see in the trailers. And so now, my initial opinion of this was essentially just a moneymaker for Disgaea 7. People are starting to agree with that. Like, they can actually see this was just a test. This wasn't a full-fledged game. Now, Disgaea 6 has pros and it has cons, okay? It introduced a lot of new features, and it also moved to a new art style. Now, the art style is probably the most polarizing complaint. Well, one of the two biggest complaints that people have, I think. With that, though, I don't mind the art style. I don't mind it. Yeah, it's moved to a more 3D style. We can't stay in the past forever, guys. There is nothing wrong with the art style. The only problem I personally had with it was the Switch version was pretty low quality. It was running Switch hardware. What do you expect? You can't have it both ways. The Switch is not powerful, okay? It is not powerful, and then to handle all the calculations required for Disgaea meant that unfortunately sacrifices had to be made. That is why the PS4 version, which originally released alongside the Switch version in Japan, we just never got that for some strange reason, was the much more superior version. However, now, with the with the PS4, the PS5, the PC version, actually, is the PC version released? I don't know if it is. Yeah, it is, actually. With that, you can see the quality is definitely much higher. It is much smoother of a game. The PC version sucks ass, actually, thinking about it. Yeah, it has been released, I have it, but the PC version is not that hiccups. The PC version does have a few bugs, but it is what it is. Now, let's talk about demonic intelligence. People are complaining that the game plays itself, okay? No. You can choose to use that, okay? It is a feature in the game that you don't have to use. Nobody has a gun to your head. If you want to play manually, you can, okay? Don't complain about a feature that you don't have to use. For those of us who do use it, I enjoy it. The reason I enjoy it, okay, is because I like maxing everything. The simple fact I can turn demonic intelligence off and like do something in the background is great to me, okay? I like maxing everything in these games. That means getting one of every item, maxing it out, okay? Because of that, that's 40 different items per category. That's hundreds of items. So for me to just load up the game, turn demonic intelligence on, go do a normal day's work, come back, and one of the items is done, I'm gonna take that, okay? Because that means what would normally take me thousands and thousands of hours and get in the way of my general day-to-day life, I can now just do because the game is doing it for me, okay? Now, yes, it does simplify the grinding. However, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. It is there to essentially speed up the grinding for those who do not want to do it. This is essentially a system for those who want to do the end game but do not want to spend the time required to get there. It is a quality of life feature. There's no use in complaining about it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Don't use it. But don't say the game is shit because of it. That's just... honestly, for lack of a better term, that's dumb. You're insulting a game for something that you don't have to use. You know what I mean? And then we also have the third biggest complaint, which is the number bloat. Now, Disgaea has always been a franchise that has had ridiculous numbers, okay? Stats have always been in the millions or the billions. Damage has always been in the trillions or the quadrillions. That's nothing new to the franchise. Disgaea 6, it just took those numbers and multiplied it by 1,000. Okay? Now, yes, the game starts at like 10,000 stats as opposed to like 100 in stats. Who cares? Like, seriously, it's no different. All that's different is you got a couple of extra zeros. The actual curve in terms of stat growth and damage is the same. Okay? There's just a couple of extra zeros added on. It doesn't really make a difference to the game. This is the one argument, right, that I can't understand people have. I literally cannot wrap my head around this argument. I've tried. Don't get me wrong. I have tried to understand where people have coming from. I've spoke to literally hundreds of people in my Disgaea 6 video comments about why they have a problem with the numbers being higher, and all they can say is it's ridiculous. That's literally the only thing they can say. It's ridiculous. Guys, the numbers in Disgaea are always ridiculous. Like, you're dealing, no matter which of these games, you're dealing billions, trillions, quadrillions of damage per hit. Why does it matter if you add a couple of extra zeros on at that point? There's no difference. The curve is still the same. You know, there's just a couple of extra zeros. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but for me, it is a silly argument. You know what I mean? It's a silly argument. So, taking user opinion out and just having my own opinion, I think the story for Disgaea 6 is actually quite good. It is emotional, for sure. It is definitely emotional. I love the characters. I love the way the story goes. I was not expecting one of the story twists. Like, I was not expecting that at all. That took me completely by surprise. And I think it is also one of the most emotional moments. It is definitely a top-tier story for Disgaea, and I normally don't rate Disgaea stories. Hell, 9 times out of 10, I don't give a shit about the stories in Disgaea. Disgaea 6 was actually a nice one. I will agree. It was a good story for a Disgaea game. Highly enjoyable. The gameplay unfortunately suffers a little problem. Now, it is one of those games where the very first time I played it on the Nintendo Switch, it took me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to get through to properly farming Rixosha mode. You know, I think my save when I first started farming Rixosha was like 400 or 500 hours already. Now, yes, I was still learning the system at that point. I obviously did get a review copy from NIS America, so unfortunately, you know, I had no guides or anything like that to really help me out. There was a small collection of Japanese guides for the very, very endgame stuff, which, you know, I could sort of pick apart and try out things like that. Unfortunately, the Google Translate was not very helpful, but I managed to get there in the end. So I did get a little bit of help once I got in Rixosha mode, but the initial process to get there, not that easy. But when they re-released Disgaea 6 on, you know, PC, PlayStation, things like that over here in Europe, those 500 to 600 hours I did in 12 hours. It took me 12 hours to be able to effectively farm Rixosha mode. I completed Rixosha 5. The only thing I had not done in those 12 hours is defeat Rixosha Ball. So unfortunately, the endgame is tricky. It's a fun, long endgame if you don't know what you're doing, you know? Like, learning what the best farms are, going through, doing all those said farms, is a fun experience. It takes a long time, but it is a fun experience. However, once you know what you're doing, you can effectively cheese the crap out of everything in the game. And once you know of one very specific overpowered build, you can effectively go straight from normal mode to Rixosha mode. Unfortunately, it is annoying that the post-game can be cheesed so easily, but it does fall into one of those categories of you don't have to do it. You would be silly not to do it because it saves hundreds of hours, but you don't have to do it. Now, I am personally, I know I'm going to get shot for this, I'm going to put this in the A tier. I like Disgaea 6. I enjoy Disgaea 6. It has some flaws. Do not get me wrong, it has some flaws. But I don't mind them, okay? It's a fun game. And as I said, you don't have to use demonic intelligence if you don't want to, you know? The complaint about moving to the 3D models, the 3D art sprites and that, I can't understand it personally. Like, I think the innovation was needed. We need a change to move on. But it's still Disgaea at the end of the day. The models are always 3D on the home world. The only thing different is the battle models, but, you know, so what? Is that really the reason you can't enjoy a game? Because if so, I honestly think it's a little sad. You can't enjoy a game because of an art style. You know, it's like that kind of means you can't enjoy any of the old games now, you know, because they're pixelated as crap, which is a shame, you know. If you are one of those people that can't enjoy a game because of the way it looks, I feel sorry for you. I really do. I don't think graphics should be taken into account when it comes to enjoyment. To a degree. Obviously, bad graphics can ruin a game. I get that, okay? I do understand that. I just don't think this change is one of those situations. But again, that's me. You guys have your own opinions, and you can disagree. That's fine. Let's talk about it down below. Try and make me understand your point of view. Because right now, I just don't get it, okay? And then the third and final one is obviously the numbers. This is one that I don't agree with, and I'm never going to agree with. You know, I don't get the complaint about the numbers being bigger. It follows the same curve as all the other Disgaeas. Yes, they're bigger, but Disgaea has always been ludicrous for the numbers. Now, again, just like the art sprites, you guys are, of course, entitled to your own opinion. I'm not going to try and change your opinion. If you think the numbers are daft, you think the numbers are daft. But if that's the case, honestly, I think you're daft. Like, that's probably gonna be a little harsh sounding, but that's just the way I see it, you know? Like, it follows the same curve. This guy is always ludicrous odd numbers. Adding a couple of extra zeros to already ridiculous numbers makes no difference as far as I'm concerned. And also, for the number bloat, Disgaea D2 is a incredibly loved game. The stats on that go up to the billions. Disgaea 5, the most loved game in the franchise. The stats on that go up to, I think it was 10 billion. It was 100 billion, wasn't it? What's the difference in going from 100 billion to a trillion? Well, technically 32 trillion was the cap for stats in Disgaea 6, but you know what I mean. Like, there's no difference, there's just a couple of extra zeros. But, rant aside, guys, that's where I'm going to be ending this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let's discuss everything here. Do you agree with these placements? I know I'm going to get shot for where I've put Disgaea 1 and Disgaea 2, but that's just my opinion, you know what I mean? I want to know what you guys think. What game did you start on? Where would you rank these games? Have you played them all? And of course, let's definitely talk about what I've just said about Disgaea 6, okay? I would love to hear your guys' feedback. And with that, make sure you hit that like button as well, because it really helps out the channel. And if you are new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any more content. As always though, everybody, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.